Test, test, 1, 2, 3. Looks like my voice is pretty loud in comparison. What if I turn this up? Is that better? A little? Might be worse. I don't know. How do I want to do this actually? Actually, I kind of want to do something else. Something like that. Oh wait, actually, hold up. One more. Ooh. That's gonna screw it up. This music should suit this alright. I kinda wanna probably change the color of that as well. Much better. That looks alright. Kinda looks like crap either way. I want to have this ready as well. Okay. So I'm going to start recording in Audacity any second now. I guess I should also have this open even though it's not talking. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a short little review thing here for like my opinions on Yooka Laylee, the game that I've been playing. We'll get into, well, the reasoning is a school project, but I'll get into everything else basically besides that in a few seconds here when I actually hit record. The format is kind of supposed to be like a podcast, but overall I'm just going to kind of talk for a bit and see where my thoughts take me, essentially. See how that goes. I want to have this ready as well. So I'm gonna start recording and see how it goes. So welcome to the first episode of Robotic Maple Reviews, which is I guess what I'm gonna be calling this. Today I'm planning on reviewing the new game Yooka Laylee. There's a lot of reasons for me choosing this game, but one of the big ones is that the games Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, most notably Banjo-Tooie, were games that I really enjoyed as a kid, and so yeah, I'm choosing to review this game and kind of compare it a little bit, I guess, to the other two games. That's basically it. So I've got kind of the format of this is going to be I have these 5 different categories that I'm going to be kind of going over in a little bit of detail, not a huge amount, but I'm not going to like just add up the total and give like some kind of score based on that, or like the average, but actually, because I think that a lot of games, it's not necessarily like they're not necessarily the sum of each of their parts, but like some aspects can really shine and make games that don't have great gameplay still really good if they have like a decent story, or if they're really like, if you're able to play them for a long amount of time, if they have like a lot of content. Not necessarily all the time. So what I'm going to do basically is top 3. The top 3 of the 5 categories are the ones that I'm going to be kind of averaging out for the total score. I think that that's pretty fair, because there are some like most notably, let's say a game like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, that has an amazing game, like an amazing gameplay. It has pretty good really good visuals, an interestingly given story, and the longevity, I would say, is pretty good considering like just the scope of the game. You could easily get like 80 plus hours out of your first playthrough of that game. But that being said, the music is still pretty good, but it's also like minimalistic a little bit. And so for that game, even though the music isn't necessarily all that, I would still give that game a very high score based on those other aspects, choosing the top 3 out of the aspects that I'm kind of considering. So, getting into Yooka Laylee, just as like a brief aside, not really an aside, but like a brief thing to start out. When I was younger, me and my brother got a Nintendo 64, and alongside the Nintendo 64 we got Banjo-Tooie, which we played so many hours of. It's easily one of my favorite games of all time. Banjo-Kazooie we got much later, is also a very good game, but I would probably rank Banjo-Tooie a little bit higher. And the reason that I mentioned this game and why I'm going to bring it up and compare it to Yooka Laylee is because the whole reason that Yooka Laylee got the press that it did, and kind of the idea behind it, is that it is the developers from the company Rare, like the people that made Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. Eventually they all got out of that company, made their own company called Playtonic, I think it's Playtonic, and is it? Either way. So that's the company that made Yooka Laylee, and the idea behind it was kind of a spiritual successor because they don't own the IP Banjo-Kazooie, but they would still like to make a game in that style. Overall, I am having fun with this game, and so my opinions here are going to be potentially a little bit harsh, but I will say that I'm not saying that this game is bad or good. I'm just giving my own personal opinion on it based on my own experiences, essentially. So starting out with the gameplay. The gameplay is pretty good. It feels very much like Banjo-Kazooie. It feels very much like Banjo-Tooie, all that kind of stuff. Like, it is through and through a platformer. So it's got the aspects of like, okay, there's a whole bunch of collectibles, go out there and find them, all that stuff. It's great. There's a ton of them. There's more per world. I think it's 25 of the, what are essentially jiggies. They're called pages in this game. So there's 25 per world, and I think that there was only 10 per world in Banjo-Kazooie and potentially more in Banjo-Tooie. I think it was kind of all over the map in Banjo-Tooie, but in this game there's 25 per world. The way that that's handled is that in each world you can go in, get a certain amount of whatever you want to, then go back out and expand the world by using more pages to make it bigger, and then there will be more stuff to find inside the world. And I'm not a huge fan of that mechanic, honestly. I will say in my opinion, it would have probably been better for them to spend less time on making one huge world and more time on making like two small worlds instead of one big world, or two and a half, like whatever. Like they could have made potentially like 5 worlds instead of the 2 worlds that they already made, with the same amount of resources. Because, and this gets into my one of the major things that I'm not a huge fan of in the game, is that the worlds don't feel distinct. Like, so in Banjo-Kazooie, and this could be, this is one of my biggest things about this game, is that it might just be like the rose-tinted glasses or whatever for me, with Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, but I could pretty much draw out a map of a place like Mumbo's Mountain, a place like Clanker's Cavern, like some of the places from Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie as well, like Mayahem Temple, the Lava and Ice World, whatever that one was called. Not so much some of them, like Cloud Cuckoo Land, who knows what's going on with that one. So it's not necessarily like a sure, I know where everything is in all the worlds in Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, but there did seem to be like more structure to it. Like I would kind of know how to get to most places, and there was distinction to each of those places in a game like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. Whereas in this game, I feel lost most of the time. It seems like the maps are too big, and so a lot of the time I'll spend just way too much time wandering around, and not necessarily a bad thing, because it does seem like they put a lot there, and I generally don't spend too much time wandering and not finding something. But the problem comes at the end of the world, at the end of each individual place, when there's 1 or 2 collectibles that I haven't found, and I can't really tell where I'm going or where I'm supposed to find this thing, and it's just a feeling of being lost, and there's no map, because it's not like, and it's not like there should be an expected map or anything like that, but it's just, yeah, it feels very large for what it is. So that's my biggest complaint about the worlds in the game, which is kind of to do with gameplay. Not really, that could also potentially be in one of the other categories, so I'll probably bring it up in more detail there. In terms of the actual gameplay, I'll say that the movement, for the most part, feels very good. There is one pretty big complaint that I have with the game, and that is there's this rolling mechanic. Well, actually, even more than that, there's the stamina. So, for whatever reason in this game, they decided that there should be a stamina bar. And it's just, there are some games where a stamina bar works, and I really don't think that this style of game should have it. I think that it doesn't suit it, and that it really takes away from the game. There are a lot of times where I have to just, like, I'll be standing in a place waiting. I think that a large proponent of it is that it takes too long to start recharging again. But yeah, there'll be a lot of the time when I'm just standing in one place waiting for my stamina bar to recharge, because I can't do anything without it. And the biggest issue with that is that there is this rolling mechanic. And the rolling is essentially what the Talon Trot was in Banjo-Kazooie. It makes you go slightly faster and allows you to go up slopes. It is something that you were able to do infinitely in Banjo-Kazooie, and something that I believe should be infinite in or in this new game, in Yooka Laylee. I don't think that, and there are reasons that they put the limitation on it. The biggest reason I can think of is there is a racing minigame, where you're forced to roll because otherwise you won't go fast enough. And the way they limit that is by making you have to run through these butterflies to refill your stamina, and if you don't do that, then you're going to not go fast enough and lose. But they had racing games in Banjo-Kazooie and in Banjo-Tooie. And the way that they did it was just having a faster thing than the rolling mechanic, or faster than the talon trot, and then have to pick that up along the way. And they could have just done the same thing in this game. And besides that one mini game, there wasn't like a ton of places where the stamina for rolling really seemed to make a difference. There was one boss battle where you have to roll up a hill to him, and that was pretty cool, and the stamina kind of comes into play because if you aren't able to get up fast enough, you are going to have to go all the way back down. And so yeah, there's a few places where it's like, okay, I can see what they were going for here, but it bogs down the gameplay a little bit, and so that immediately takes off a little bit for me in terms of, because it's such a major mechanic in the game as well, like it is something that you will be doing most of the time while you're playing the game. And in addition to the stamina, it feels very slidey. Like the talon trot felt quick and precise. It felt like every time that you moved your control stick, you were moving the character in the same way that you wanted to. In this game, because it's a rolling mechanic instead of just being on other types of feet, you really feel like you don't have complete control of the way you're moving, and it doesn't feel good. This is coming from someone who's put a lot of hours into other platformers, not even just Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, but like a lot of games, and it doesn't feel good to play with this mechanic. So that also takes a little bit away from me. Besides that, there was a few other things that just really kind of frustrated me with the game. There are some mechanics that are explained one way and then completely just not done in the same way. Most notably, the one that I've been constantly frustrated with is you're given a move that is supposedly supposed to break glass, and then you see some glass that looks like it's already got a little bit of a crack in it. So then obviously you try and use this move to break the glass, and then it doesn't do that. And then you think to yourself, oh, well, why didn't that work? And just as an aside here also, this move that you're trying to use uses stamina as well, which is just another annoyance, whatever. So you try again, whatever, it still doesn't work. And the reason behind that is because there's another move that allows your rolling attack, as it turns out, to go faster. You like charge it up or whatever, but like that allows you to break through glass. But before that, there's all these places where there's this glass and you're just like, okay, well, why isn't this working? Why isn't this breaking? It doesn't make sense. And like they could have done other stuff. Maybe they couldn't have, but like the move that they have, it's like a sonar blast type thing. They could have just not had that in the game, honestly, or had it explained differently. Have something. It's frustrating for a player when a mechanic is explained one way and then it just doesn't seem to work the way that it seems like it's supposed to work. The only other thing that I can think of, and this is more of just like, I might want to even put this in a different segment. No, I think it still goes in gameplay. There's another move where you're able to, essentially, it's the equivalent of shooting out eggs in Banjo-Kazooie, but you're like, you eat a fruit and then you're able to shoot out an elemental type of thing based on that. And so you get this move, and it's only ever explained that you're able to shoot it out in a straight line, much like in Banjo-Kazooie. In Banjo-Tooie, they implemented a new thing where you were able to aim that. And I was wondering the entire time that I had this, like, okay, I wonder if there's going to be something where I can aim it, where I can look around and actually shoot in other directions. And there was kind of this point where I was trying to shoot it out, and the shots that I was taking were going just slightly too high above the switch that I was supposed to hit. And I was stuck there for probably like 15 minutes just trying to shoot eggs, like trying to jump in the air and then shoot it because like it just wouldn't hit. And then finally, like I just started hitting buttons on the controller and I found out that I could zoom in. And when I zoomed in, like did the first person type camera, then all of a sudden there's a reticle there, but it's never explained in the game that you're able to do that. And like that's poor game design. Like, absolutely not good game design. You should never have something like that that's just like, because your players can't be expected to find that out, especially for a mechanic that it only lasts probably 20 seconds each time you get it, and you don't get it all the time. So it's not like you're constantly experimenting with this thing. It's something that doesn't happen that often. And yeah, that's just one of those things where it just made me kind of shake my head and go like, I don't know what I was expecting, but like it doesn't work. And then the only other thing that I'll say, this is like the last point I have for gameplay. There are some mini games. There's this guy called Rextro, and his mini games are kind of just not fun. They're not necessarily bad, and it could just, this is more my own personal opinion, but I really have not enjoyed any of the Rextro mini games. And the only, like, I'd be fine if I only had to do them once, but each one of them gets you 2 different pages. You get one for completing it, and then you get another one for getting a high score in it. Even if you get a high score the first time, it doesn't give you the second page, and you have to play the game twice. And what really sucks for that is that there's some mini games that last like, 3 minutes, which in a game as fast-paced as a platformer, 3 minutes is pretty substantial, especially when you're doing something boring like playing one of these mini games, or if you're not having fun with it like I was. Some people will probably have a blast with the mini games, but I personally did not. And the same for this other thing, this guy named Cardos, where you do a minecart minigame. And it can be incredibly frustrating. The Cardos segments are my absolute least favorite thing about this game, because they just don't function the way that you want them to. It's another one of those things where it kind of takes away control from the player. I found myself quite a bit of the time I'd try and break when I had braked maybe like a few seconds ago, and it was still slightly on cooldown, and then I'd hit an enemy, lose a few of whatever collectibles you're collecting during that, and you need to get like a certain amount or else you have to do the whole thing over again. But the most frustrating thing for me is just, well, there was one time when I boosted and I jumped, and then the cart turned, or not the cart, the track turned, and the cart didn't turn. The cart just kept going, and then I died, and it was right near the end of a course, and I got a little bit upset about that. And that's my biggest problem with the cart minigame, is that it's in this weird 2.5D thing where it's also zoomed in a little bit too much, so you can't see stuff coming until it's pretty much already on you. And it just, the cart minigame is very not great. That's my professional opinion on it, is that I would not want to play that any more than I have to. So overall for gameplay, and so I just listed off a whole bunch of things that I really didn't like about it basically, but overall I do have a blast playing it. There's a lot of cool things. There's like, first of all, there's these tonics that you're able to get, and the tonics give you all kinds of cool things. It's essentially like the cheats in Banjo-Kazooie games, but in this one you are limited to one at a time, and you unlock them by doing various things. It's a pretty cool mechanic. The overall exploration's really cool most of the time. Like, the maps feel big, whatever, but like it feels very Banjo-Kazooie-esque when you're wandering around finding stuff. A lot of the collectibles are cool. There's been a lot of like neat subsections of the game where like it's fun. It's platforming. It's back to basics, stuff like the N64. It's fun. So if you can look past a lot of the other stuff that I was saying, it is still a very fun game to play. That being said, I think I'm going to give gameplay about a 6.5 out of 10. It's difficult to put a number on it, but I think that just so many of those frustrating things that I was saying really do take away a substantial amount from the game. A lot of it could be fixed. I think one of the biggest limiting factors is the stamina, and if they just took the stamina and adjusted it slightly, it would probably make the game much more enjoyable. Now I'd like to move on to music in the game, and this is an interesting one, mostly because my opinion is a little bit mixed on it. I'm listening to music for the game right now, and it sounds like Banjo-Kazooie music. It does. Like, it sounds like the type of music you would hear in a Banjo-Kazooie game, to some extent. But also, a lot of the music is a little bit, like, it blends into the background. You don't really notice it like you did in Banjo-Kazooie. Most notably, I don't even know what the music was like for the ice world that I went to. I don't remember it. It just completely forgettable. The foggy whatever was, like the swamp section, had some interesting music. It sounded kind of like a mix between the Haunted Mansion in Banjo-Kazooie and maybe Bubble Bloop Swamp. But that being said, also it blended into the background a little bit more. I think that the music in Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie was very front and center, and it really, like, it was very upbeat. It hit you right in the face. It made you really notice it. Whereas the music in this game, it doesn't hit you as hard. It doesn't have that cheery feel to it. I don't know what it is. It's hard to put into words. But that being said, the music is still very good. Like, listening to it now, maybe it just doesn't blend with the gameplay, or with the game as well as it should. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. I think that my personal opinion of the music is that it is still very good. So I'm going to give the music an 8, I think, out of 10 as well. It could still be better, and I think that the biggest issue with it is that it just doesn't necessarily fit with the overall game. Like, with the areas that it's in, maybe. And then it blends into the background a little bit too much. The visuals is actually something that I'm very impressed with. The visuals, like, it looks phenomenal. So there is one more Banjo-Kazooie game called Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and it looks alright, but the character design in that game looks horrendous. It's all blocky, it looks bad. This game, Yooka Laylee, is basically like what... It feels like a Nintendo game, or a Nintendo 64 game rather, if a Nintendo 64 game was scaled to be on a next-gen console like the ones that we have today. It looks right. It looks like how it should look. And that's basically all I have to say about it. It looks really, really nice. And the characters have unique designs that are they're fun. They're colorful, all that. I guess in terms of visuals, I'm going to kind of get into that thing again that I was saying about the worlds kind of blended. The worlds, essentially, they don't have enough distinctions within them. I guess the biggest thing is, like, in a place like Mumbo's Mountain in Banjo-Kazooie, I'm going to go back to this a few times because I think it really demonstrates a lot of the points that I'm getting at. Mumbo's Mountain has a lot of distinct areas. It's got the area with Congo, whatever his name was. It's got the area with, like, the huts. It's got the area with that weird stone thing that goes, like, it loops around. It's got the anthill right in the dead center. And then it also has, like, a few hills and stuff. It's got, like, a little lake. And it's not too big of a world. Like, you can see most of it just, like, when you walk in. And it's all kind of centralized around this anthill. And, yeah, you can... I guess it's a very circular design, so you don't feel like you're going in one direction for, like, an extended period of time. And the same can be said for a lot of other places. Like, they have these distinct areas that make you remember them. Like, in Clanker's Cavern, there's, like, the big place with the shark. And then there's also, like, a whole bunch of offshoots. Like, first of all, you can go inside the shark. And that's got its own whole thing with it. And then there's also, like, the area directly behind the shark where there's these mutated crabs and there's whatever else. There's, Bubble Glue Swamp has like this giant turtle, it's got the giant alligator, it's got the maze in the back, it's got like an area with tree stumps and frogs, it's got like you can very specifically remember a lot of the areas in Banjo-Kazooie, and the same can be said for Banjo-Tooie as well. There are some places like that I will say have this kind of design that reminds me of Yooka Laylee, such as Glitter Gulch Mine. It's very windy, it's not as open. I don't even know, like I don't even think it's necessarily about the openness, but like a lot of the areas in Glitter Gulch Mine do kind of just merge together and you don't necessarily know where you are in relation to everything else. Same can be said for Cloud Cuckoo Land. It's also very confusing, you don't really know where you are. I think a lot of that has to do with the area transitions in Cloud Cuckoo Land. But in Yooka Laylee, I just feel so lost, like all the time when I'm wandering around these worlds. Like, there was a cool boss battle up on top of some hill in the first world that I went into, Tribal Stack Tropics. There's this cool boss battle up on this hill, and I don't know where that hill was. I know where the Shovel Knight segment is because it's like directly to the right of the spawn area, and I know that there's a temple directly ahead of you, and that's like all I know of that first world. I know that there are these other things, but I don't know where they are in relation to each other. And it might just be a proponent of the fact that I played so many hours of these other games that I just like kind of memorized them, but in the same way I think that there is something to be said for just like a cohesive smaller world as compared to these humongous worlds. So for visuals, I'm still going to give it a 9 out of 10, I think, because it still looks really good. My biggest problem with it, and it's not really even necessarily a visual thing, but just not a lot of variety, not a lot of distinction between areas. Story's a short one. There isn't really much story. Story's going to be like a bigger segment on a lot of other games that are more known for story. But in terms of this one, it's essentially just the same as most other platformers. It's like, oh, there's a book that's been taken and all the pages are falling out and whoever has the book rules the world or something like that. And so, yeah, the lizard and the bat set out to save the world by collecting pages. Like, it's not anything special, but it's exactly what you would expect from this type of game. I'm not going to give it like an amazing score just because I don't really want the story to be like a swaying factor in this, but I'd say that the story is easily like a 7. And that's just because it's what you expect from this type of game. It's not like, it doesn't smack you in the face, it doesn't get crazy into detail or anything like that. It's just, it is what it is. Longevity. This is an interesting one because longevity, in my opinion, is it's what games like Binding of Isaac have. It's what games like I would even say a game like Breath of the Wild has. It's the type of thing where you can play this game either for a long amount of time to begin with, or you would want to go back and play it a lot afterwards. And I don't necessarily think either of those things are true for this game. I would say that this game will probably get like maybe 10 hours out of me at most, which if you're going by $1 an hour is not a very good ratio. That being said, like, it's not I don't know that I would say that any of the other games in the series necessarily did better than that. I think that the reason that I put so many hours into the other games was because I was a little kid and I was bad at them. And now I'm not a kid and I know how to play platformers and expedite the process a little bit. But overall, I can't give this game that good of a score in terms of longevity unless you are a child, I guess. So I'm gonna say for longevity, I'm gonna give it like a 5. I don't think that it's that good. And that essentially that means that the best parts of this game, as I've described them, are the music, the visuals, and the story. And I've also very specifically said that the story is not necessarily, like, it shouldn't have that much sway. So, in terms of my overall score of the game, even though I was saying top 3, all that, I'm going to kind of negate the story score, and so I'm going to put the overall score at around a 7.5. It should be a 7.75, whatever. I think that 7.5 is a fair score. It's not a perfect game. It just isn't. Anyone that tries to tell you, oh, this is like, it's an amazing game, it's the successor to Banjo-Kazooie, it's not. I don't think that it necessarily is on par with those games. I think that there's a lot of things that they need to fix, but it is still a good game. And it's a game that I would recommend people get, and it's a game that I hope that people get, because I still believe in Playtonic, that they can kind of pick up the ball a little bit for the next game they make. They've got the engine here already, and I'm kind of hoping that they'll make a Yooka Laylee 2 that kind of fixes a lot of these problems. I don't want the game to not sell well, because I really hope that it does. Yeah, that it does well enough that they make another one. Because, yeah, I this is the thing with this game, right, is that I loved Banjo-Kazooie and I loved Banjo-Tooie, and I really want to love this game, and it's not on par with them. But I believe that they can make a new game that is on par with it, if given the time, and if they take the constructive criticisms, like the ones that I'm saying right here, if they take them all into consideration, they can make a game that's good. So, I guess that's basically it. That's my Robotic Maple reviews for Yooka Laylee. Yeah. Thanks to everyone. If anyone actually listens to this, I appreciate it. And yeah, I'll be doing this more often, I think. So, see y'all later. Alright, done recording. I actually really did enjoy that. I liked talking for like however long that was, just about like my own thoughts on a game. That was cool. I'm gonna keep this. I'm not gonna keep it front and center like that, but I am gonna have that ready in case I ever want to use it again. But now I need to do some editing because this thing's actually due tonight. So yeah, I'm not gonna stream right now. I might stream later. Yeah, see you guys later.